Welcome back to Blatantly Honest with Makaila Nichols. On today's episode, I sat down with Jillian Kerwin. She's a successful blogger, advocate for accessible fashion, and part of the Little Person community. In her blog, Always Looking Up, she writes about trying to fit into a world that was not designed for people like her, demonstrating that height is just a number and not a limit. Jillian, I'm so happy to have you on the show. How long have you been with Gamut?
Um, for a little less than a year now.
Wow. So what led you to find Gamut?
So I guess it starts back with finding Mindy in Runway Dreams. So I, as a little person, have always been interested in fashion, but could never find things that really fit me. And I grew up watching Project Runway, so I was like all into it, just could not develop the sewing skills to design my own clothes as much as I wanted to. It's hard. I don't know how they do it. So kind of that I always wanted to pursue it some way, but just never really could figure that out. And kind of put on the back burner, would do other things. And then last year I started or I guess in 2019, Sinead Burke was on the cover of British Vogue. So I was like, I actually want to do this. I want to see if there's some way I could do this. So I started just kind of reaching out to people, Googling, and one of the people I found was Mindy in Runway of Dreams. And I had a phone call with her and it just went really well. She gave me ideas. And then shortly after that, I think it was January, I started my blog, Always Looking Up, which was before the pandemic, solely going to be focused on fashion. And then when the pandemic hit, it kind of evolved into something bigger because I'm like, I need more things to talk about. I'm not shopping. I'm not going anywhere. And it kind of just, it felt natural too, to just kind of let it progress into something bigger. And then at one point, Gamut reached out to me and I was like, what do you want to be? And I'm like, yes, of course.
Yes, the answer is yes. Oh, that's awesome. Wow. And one thing led to another. And Runway Dreams is so awesome. So for those listening, how would you best describe it?
They are a nonprofit that advocates for accessible fashion for people with disabilities. So they do fashion shows. They just did a recent one. It was virtual, and they kind of work with designers and really try to push for fashion designers and fashion brands to create accessible designs for people with disabilities. Because I think there's now it's definitely it's a misconception that it wasn't possible. So they're really trying to make it just part of the fashion world and available to everyone.
That's incredible. I think it's fascinating to me because you see a lot of these shows, I think Tommy Hilfiger did one, but adaptive and accessible fashion because
Mm-hmm.
even Target, I saw some amazing Halloween costumes,
Yeah,
people in wheelchairs and all that stuff. And I'm like, I don't understand how that hasn't been a thing prior. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Why hasn't it been a thing since a while ago?
I'm just as confused. And because I don't understand, because it seems to me they're part of, everyone's a part of the demographic. And one thing I always say when I talk about disability and what I think people don't realize is that disability doesn't discriminate, we do. So it could affect anyone. It's not just if I'm not disabled, it doesn't affect me. I don't need to worry about, or I don't need to design, because it really does affect and can touch everybody. So I don't know why it's now. I'm glad it's finally starting. I don't know why it hadn't started a while ago, but even with I think it's also people don't, again, because they think it doesn't affect them and no one's talking about it. Project Runway just had in their most recent season, they finally had designers design for Paralympians. So some of them were in a wheelchair, had other disabilities. So, but Project Runway is 18 years old, and this is the first time that they ever had them challenge their designers to do that. So it's I don't understand why it's so slow, and it's still very, as much progress has been made, it's still only certain disabilities are being seen, I think. And it's just I don't know.
That it just blows my mind that it's taken this long, to your point. I I mean, my uncle, he's not really like my uncle, he's my family uncle. And he's in a wheelchair, he's paralyzed. And, I never really had thought about it because I just assumed oh, okay, he can just put on this or wear this. But I think people just have this thing oh, it's not necessarily my problem, to your point. And it's
Right,
but why? But that's the problem in itself. And so
right.
seeing that and just being like, oh, maybe that's kind of like the thing, the bystander effect, like someone will intervene and someone will do something. But if everyone's
Mhm.
bystander, like that's a huge problem because it took 18 years, like you said, for Project Runway to be like, oh man, like this is actually a thing.
Exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
uh, what do you think it's going to take for more companies to like step up? Like, what do you think they can do better? How do they start this conversation? Like, a lot of things need to happen.
I think to start, there needs to be people like Shanae Burke, who is one of my personal idols. I look up to her. I'm inspired by her. But more people like that being a part of the conversation, whether that is through actually being the designers or to be working with these brands and saying, there's no there's no excuse. There are no excuses. There are ways to figure out these problems, and we're in the design world. We're meant to be creative. We're meant to be innovative. Like that's part of the design fields. So I think including more people with disabilities in those conversations, and really also giving them the chance to really be seen and not just limiting to say like, okay, we talked to one person, we understand, like, and really trying to include everyone with in that conversation. I think just not being afraid, it's a big thing, is not saying I can't, because I think that's a big, like, people just like, I can't, it's too complicated. I know, like, one of the challenges I discussed around with little people is that we all, even there are 400 types of little people. So it's like, how do you design for all 400 types? And it's like, but there's definitely a starting point. So
So,
like, just coming up with excuse, like,
yeah.
just to stop making excuses and start talking to people, I think is the first step. That was a really long way to get to that
No,
point.
no, I no, it was on the wall. So I did not know that. So there's
Mhm.
400 different types of little people.
Yes.
Where, like, what is that? What does that, not to be like, what does that mean?
Mhm.
But like, what does that entail? How do you think 400 different types could get involved in this conversation? Is there a movement going on?
So there's like a little people, there's a national organization called Little People of America, which I've been a member of since I was diagnosed when I was about 6 weeks old. And my mom didn't know, like, I'm the first little person in my family, only little person in my family. My mom and dad didn't know that they were having a little person until I kind of came into the world.
So yeah, how, for people that aren't familiar with, like, so the technical term is dwarfism, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So
So how does that happen? Like, yeah, how do you describe it? So your mom didn't know? Like, what was the
she didn't,
process like?
yeah, she didn't know because there just wasn't, they weren't really looking, and like they had no reason to look. But it's actually very common. I think about, if I remember correctly, about like 80% of little people are born to average size family, and it's just a pull of the genetic, it's like a genetic mutation.
Mhm.
The type I have is achondroplasia, which is the most common, and the simplest way to describe it is that I just have an average size torso. So like proportionally, our torsos are the same. I just have shorter arms and legs. So that's kind of like the very like simple version. There's other things.
Yeah.
So that's the most common amongst all dwarfism types. And there's still a chance that I could have an average sized kid, like on Little People Big World. They have average sized kids. There's a mix. But it really was, in my case, it was just, they just didn't know um, until I was born that I was going to be a little person. Even then, they weren't entirely sure until they took me to a different doctor who said, just kind of looked at me and was like, "Yeah, she's little." That was the extent of the diagnostic testing for me.
Wow.
He just looked and he knew. But there's a national organization, going back to like the group of called LPA, which is another nonprofit that is it's like, I look at more of as a community. It's like, it's where I met all my little people friends, and they have conferences, and you can connect with doctors and with other people who kind of understand who understand what it's like to be a little person, and because they are one. They have expos where you can buy adaptive products for your home. And so it's just kind of it's a way for little people to get together and to also address problems like this, within the fashion industry, and to really, but like for me, it is a social thing where I get to meet and connect with the little people, because for my entire education, it was always the only little person until I think my last year of college. So
Wow.
that was like, yeah. So it's nice to have, it really does create like a national community of little people.
That's that like breaks my heart a little bit that you didn't really have someone like that until you found this lovely organization. So speaking of that, I mean, did you ever have like depressive thoughts like, oh, I don't feel good enough, or oh, I feel like this? I mean, what was your mental state? Obviously, you're beautiful, talented, and successful, so you're doing
Thank
everything.
you.
I'm sure. I mean, we all have those days. I mean, can
Yeah.
you attest to one of those?
Um, I still like, I'll be honest, like I still do have those moments. But yeah, it definitely wasn't the easiest in school, and like being the only little person in basically any room or really anywhere I walk into. That's just kind of where because again, I don't have any little people siblings. My cousins are all average size. Um, so it's definitely hard because like you do feel like, and like you do kind of feel like you're alone and you're always kind of like left out. Like everything is just kind of happening above you, whether people mean to or not. It does feel like conversations will sometimes happen above you. People will walk normally, and like I think sometimes the closer I am to people, they kind of forget that I'm a little person, which is both good and bad because they treat me normally, but at the same time they won't wait for me if like we're walking somewhere. So it's kind of like that. So I definitely would like go through stages of um just like kind of feeling like alone or like not like it. I think probably the darkest was probably like in high school because I think that's where you're really trying to find yourself, and it's hard when you don't always feel seen to really find who you are and try to um find out who you want to be. But I think definitely like though I do have like my family is amazing, and I do have like a core group of best friends who have known me and have accepted me, as a little person, as just a person with all the weird, everything. So like that has helped a lot. And then um I think that like without those experiences, I wouldn't be blogging. I wouldn't be trying to be an advocate for the little people community. I wouldn't be trying to, hopefully inspire other people or to like create change if I didn't have those experiences either.
That's powerful. And I'm so happy that you have a really core group of friends because honestly, that's all that matters. Like,
Yeah,
I have a group of friends and I'm like, all right, what everyone else thinks doesn't matter. It doesn't apply because I
right.
have my people and that's that. So
Exactly.
that's awesome. So, okay, let's talk a little bit about because I'm sure that if you weren't bullied directly, I don't know if you were, have you been bullied directly because of your height?
Yes.
See, and that's another.
And yeah.
Good.
And yeah, it's like people, and I don't think people realize, and that's something that I think the LPA community is in general is trying to change, is that there's one word that we really don't want to be called, but it is, and it because it is derogatory, but people think it's okay, and it is sometimes even a part of like normal vocabulary, like things are called this. So, and they don't seem to understand why people take offense when little people take offense to it. So it's just kind of like this ongoing. But I think
Is it the M word?
growing up, yeah, the M word. And they just, and it's hard because it is, there are sports called that, and it's just like, but they still understand that it's hurtful, that it's derogatory, that it is offensive, it has its roots in being offensive. It's not just something new that we've decided. But and then so like yeah, and then a lot of times I'll get pointed at, I'll get stared at. People think they're very clever with trying to be sneaky and taking out their phones to take a picture. I don't know why. I don't see the excitement in it, but it's just,
Some
and
people
then they
think.
feel like it's my fault for calling them out, and I'm just like, but you're the one who's trying to take a picture. I'm not trying to take a picture of you. I'm just trying to go about my day.
I can't imagine. I mean, have you ever just like had a moment because oh man, I so would, where I would just like literally pose and be like, if you're gonna take a picture, like ask.
Oh yeah,
Good for you.
I
Like,
either pose or I like take my phone out and like I won't like even open my camera, but I'll just like act the same way because they'll think I am, and it just like to kind of like make them understand like what it feels like to be like that, or yeah, it just because people are,
people sometimes stink.
yeah, they really do.
That must just be annoying. I mean, does that happen often, or you think people are getting more cognizant of it and more understanding?
um I want to say that people are becoming more understanding, but at the same time they're not. I don't know if like if I'm like not entirely sure just because of COVID and because I've been social, just like trying to not be around large groups of people. But I think definitely if it's not the phone or like people point, like there's definitely like other things that happen that like I still haven't been able to get away from in terms of people behaving towards me in a way that I don't appreciate or think it's appropriate.
I can't imagine. I mean, is this something you deal with like quite often? Because I'm sure every time you go out to a different social setting, there's always going to be like that one, we'll just call him an a-hole, you know, just like just a jerk. And
Yeah,
like, how do you deal with that? I mean, I'm sure it still hurts.
it does. I usually just try to ignore either depending on their age. Like if it's a little kid, I like because they don't understand. They don't understand. So I'll try to smile and wave and like even like try to make eye contact with their parents to kind of see how they because I kind of more than look at their parents and see how they react. And see how they explain because I've heard some bad explanations. And usually if I hear the bad ones, I just kind of like say hi to kind of see if they'll talk to me. Because I'm always like, if you have questions, and I think I'm gonna speak for myself, I'm not gonna speak for other little people, but ask. I'm more than happy to answer if you don't understand because I know that I might be the first little person you're meeting that day. So I fully get it that it doesn't make sense that I'm a child size driving a car and doing all these other things. So I totally get it. With adults, I kind of just I learned to I just either ignore it or kind of like make eye contact and like kind of make them like, no, like I know what you did. I know what you said. I'm not going to address it. But it's interesting when I'm with other people and it happens because I like to, like with my friends, because
Oh,
I never, like, I'm more worried about their reaction than mine.
don't go fight anyone.
It's, I wrote about this, so I guess I could talk about it. It's happened twice. Where like my friends, I was at my cousin. I wrote about it on blog post because I was shocked at their reaction. It was like my cousin's bachelorette party, and we were at one point, and I hear this other girl. I don't know what she said or if she laughed or something, but my cousin's friend just went off on her. And then later on that weekend, it happened again in like broad daylight with kids who were younger, like old enough to know better, but they were still kids. And this one girl just, she was amazing and just like completely had my back. And I was just like, okay. Like, could more people be like you? Because I was amazed. And I told my, like, I never expected that or asked that. I just, it was like incredible. And she like had just met me that weekend. So for that to happen, I was just like, okay, there are good people in the world.
There are nice people that, and that's
Yeah.
things like it makes me so angry. You know, it doesn't matter what someone looks like, sounds like, acts like, any of it. And if someone is going to treat them poorly, I'm like, I don't care who I am. I don't have to know that person, but if I see it,
Right.
man, I get hot. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
someone like hold my earrings because I'm
Right.
over there and like talk to them because people are just so like they don't understand the value and the not the importance, but the value that their words can have and how it can really hurt.
Exactly.
And it's like, you know, there's that saying, sticks and stones might break my bones, but words will never hurt me. And I'm like, that is so false because
It's so false. It is. And it's like they also realize like they also don't want to like they wouldn't want to be in the other person's shoes being told these things. So why would you think it's okay to say them to someone else? Like it's also like treat others the way you want to be treated. It is very simple.
yeah, you'd think so, but I guess some people are
Right.
Neanderthals about it and they're like, I don't know, it doesn't apply to me. So
Right.
whatever. But you know what? There's good people out there and people like
There
yourself
are.
sparking this conversation because it needs to be done. And I just
Mm-hmm.
blows my mind. And if any fashion company is listening, you know what? You have a pro right here and you could definitely use some advice and guidance because you guys clearly need it. So just calling them out.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I read in one of your blog posts, and if you don't want to answer this, that's a-okay. I saw that someone called you a that. How
Yeah.
did that make like that made me, I was disgusted when I saw that. Like I that hurt me for you before like I even had the chance to talk with you. How was that?
That was I was hard because again it was a kid who I think I'm gonna say was like 10 years old. So like if it's I kind of say like if they're like 5 or younger, like they really just generally don't know. And I fully understand, even with kids who are older, that they really might not have never seen a little person before, and they don't understand why someone their height is clearly not acting like them, is clearly acting like their parent. So I fully get it, but I think I would hope at like 10 years old or so that they would know to not call another human being, regardless of how they looked, that. So when I heard it, and like I didn't, I will say I wish I stayed around to see the dad's reaction to it, because I wanted to know, like, because I kind of feel like that also, like, that behavior reflects more on the parent teaching their kid. So I didn't really stay in that area to hear the dad's reaction, but it was just kind of, it really threw me to the point where I did feel like I needed to write about, because I'm used to the pointing, I'm used to the staring, but to be called that, to be made to seem like less than a human, was just, it was not okay. And it really just did throw me for a loop that I never expected.
I'm so sorry that you had to deal with that, but it takes a lot to be able to take that experience and say, I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna write about it, because
Yeah.
in that, in that action, it's like, I don't want someone else that might experience something like that to feel alone. So
Right.
I'm proud of you for handling that the way you did, because that's disgusting. I mean, even though it's a kid that, clearly maybe the kid didn't fully understand, but still, like, you can't make excuses for some people just being mean.
Right. And like, I asked my friend whose daughter was around the same age, like, if this was your daughter who said it and she had never met me before, like, how would you, or just like another human in general, she's like, I would not be okay with that. So like, to like kind of get that validation, because then it was like, am I overreacting? Am I overthinking about it? But to kind of get that validation of like, no, that's just not okay, regardless of who you say it to, like, was needed, I think, for me.
Yeah, that's just, well, I'm glad you got that like second opinion, because I'm sure you felt all the emotions and you're like,
Yeah.
how to feel about that. I mean, I want to know how to feel. So,
Right.
but no, I saw that. I was like, I have to ask her about that, because that's just horrible. And just makes me sick. Whoever that person is, learn how to treat people better, because
Right. Teach your kids.
teach your kids is a moral of the story, because among
Hmm.
kids mimic their parents, and if the
Right.
are not nice, then the kids are gonna.
Right. Exactly.
So let's talk a little bit about body image. So it is the
Mhm.
month of February, and
Yes.
this is like Body Image Awareness Month. So
Hmm.
young woman, and especially in the field that you're in, the entertainment industry and all that, what is your opinion on beauty? What does beauty mean to you? And do you ever feel like you have to be a certain kind of beautiful?
Um, I think beauty is reflected from the inside out. I think if you feel beautiful, then that's how the world is going to see you. I think it's very hard, at least for me, when I like want to be inspired by, like, when everyone is telling me what beautiful is, and none of these people look like me. And that's not a new thing. Like I say, I'm still waiting for my Disney princess. I'm still waiting for a Disney princess with disabilities or with dwarfism as someone to look up to and reason, and say, I want to be like her one day, because I never really could as a kid. And so I think, I feel like, though, it is reflected from like the inside out. And like, if you feel beautiful, regardless of what society says, then you're beautiful. I think everyone is truly beautiful from the inside out. And again, like, every body is different, and for someone to say like, no, like, it's not, like, just doesn't make sense to me, because no bodies are the same in every body. Like, what the body can do is much more important than how a body looks, in my opinion.
Amen to that. I think that is the best body line I've ever heard, and I feel I like that. No, I vibe with that hard, because like, you're right. I mean, everybody's beautiful, and it's more impressive what the body can do, what it can fight off,
Mhm.
what it can overcome, instead of,
Right.
like, people forget. Like, I always say, like, we're all this is like really morbid, so this is gonna come out so bad. But I feel like we're like these giant, like, or we're these sacks of like like blood and skin, and
We
it's like,
are.
and we're pretty, like, we're strong. Like, I run into things, other people run into things, and I'm like, "You're doing great." Like, people need to look at that and appreciate, like,
Right.
there's a lot of things that could go wrong every single day just walking, like,
Hmm.
stuff like that. Or if you can't walk, just like if you hit something or whatnot. And people just, I don't know, they have like this standard of what beauty is. And like, I mean, me growing up modeling, because I was told, oh, you're so tall, Makaila, like that's awesome. They made me feel so small inside and saying like, you're not good enough, Makaila, you're not strong enough, you're not pretty enough. And it's like, if that's their standard of beauty, is tall and skinny,
Right.
why are you gonna make people feel horrible inside? And it's like, what does that say to everyone else? It's just, I never understood it. And kind of being like one foot in the fashion industry, that needs to change because
Yeah.
no woman, I mean, I had eating disorders, I was anorexic, I was bulimic. Because what? Because someone told me this is what I should be to be beautiful?
Right.
Like,
It doesn't make sense.
no.
It really, and when they say, and it's like the fashion, it's supposed to be an industry, it's like embracing all these creatives and all, like that's like, it is about creation, like I said before, like it's a creative industry, but then to limit that does to like one specific ideal of beauty and like what is beautiful doesn't make sense. And I do think it's changing, but I think it's very slow.
I agree. I think they say they're changing and all this stuff. I mean, the standards are just sick, and what they want these like young men and women to look like is just, it's not real. Like,
Yeah,
not real. And it's like, show someone, like, let's showcase, people of different color, different ethnicity. Let's showcase people who might have a disability, but they're so able in their own way, and no one wants to talk.
right.
And it upsets me because I thought like, oh, like I was a model and that was cool, but like that just rubs people the wrong way. So I don't even like saying that word, because I feel like that makes me feel less than, because I feel like I was part of the problem. So
But you weren't. I don't think, no, I don't think that, like, because again, like, it's still like, I'm trying to think of how to,
you're
I don't
fine.
think it is wrong. Yeah, I don't think it's wrong to like say, like, for people to say that to you because, that's saying that you can't think that you're beautiful either. And it's like, no, you are allowed to feel that you are beautiful. And if you do meet society's standards of beauty, that's not, it kind of just shows that society needs to change to be accepting of other standards of beauty in all sizes, of all colors, of all ethnicities, of all abilities. Like that just kind of shows that, now I think because we're trying to be so accepting that we're kind of like, you can't though diminish another group to try to build another group up. Like you can't do that either.
Yeah, they need to figure it out, because I feel
Yeah.
like it's like they are diminishing like certain groups. And
Hmm.
like, I mean, that's a whole other conversation, but everyone sees it, but no one like addresses the elephant in the room, you know?
Right.
And it's just like, I don't get it. But, and here's another question for you. So when
Hmm.
people say the word like disability, like I think there are so many other better words personally. Like, what are your thoughts on that word? What can people say to be more cognizant and more inclusive? Because I feel like sometimes words fail and we say the things we don't mean.
Um, I think that's a very individual question. I think because there are people who are person first, where they want to be my name, like call me by my name, don't call me like refer to me as my person, not my disability. And then other people who say, call me disabled, like I am disabled, call me disabled. For me, I'm okay with the term disabled. I think that's the best term that applies to me because I'm obviously not, I don't have the same abilities as an average sized person. I'm obviously different. I don't think I'm necessarily handicapped where it really does limit what I can do. I think it's more society and the environment that tries to set limits, and it's really fun to try to push back at and be like, no, 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 I can do it, and find really crazy, stupid ways to prove it. So I'm okay with being defined as disabled if that's a way to explain it. Do I think that there's anything I really can't do? Like, no, I think that it's the nicest way to explain it. Like even with the term like little person or dwarf, like some people go either way. I'm fine with little person. I'm fine with dwarf. I'd rather you just call me by my name if you know it. And again, with that, like also just ask me.
Mhm.
I'm like speaking for myself. ask me, I will answer. I'm more than happy to.
I love the way you said that because I think, I think people are so like, well, I don't want to offend them and I don't want to make them feel a certain way. I mean, do you think it's better for someone to just say, hey, like, how do I address, like, what do you say? Like, how do you kind of break down that barrier for someone that is like, I don't know what to say or how to go about it? I mean, what's the best way for them to kind of break that ice to make you feel comfortable?
Um, I, for me, I'd rather you just ask like, I've never, how do I address you? Like just very simple. I don't think you have to overthink it. I think you just say, how would you like me to address you? Can I make any accommodations for you? Or is there anything that like if like we're going to meet, like if it's like a prearranged thing, like is there anything you need in advance? Like just I think if you overthink it, that's kind of like what I think if it's like just ask the simple questions because at least in my experience, I will answer. There's really nothing I said to you before. Like I'll answer anything. So, but I think in general, like if you meet someone who doesn't, and I think like kind of like referring to that a kid just doesn't make sense,
Mhm.
ask the simple questions because that's honestly probably that'll be the answer that you want. If you try to like dance around the subject, I don't think you're going to get the information you really need because you're trying not to, but like at the same time, you just need to ask the questions. And more often than not, people will give you, will be more than happy to answer.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that because I'm sure sometimes people might be listening. They're like, well, I don't know. I don't want to offend anyone. And I think we live in this culture of like, I don't want to offend anyone. But sometimes you just have to
Mhm.
be smart and be like, hey, how can we, what's the best way to go about it? How can I be better? And it's like, you just got to say it because if you don't say it,
Right.
it's like no one
Just
gives.
ask, right. Because then, like, I did it when, like, I always like when you go on job interviews and they're like, do you have any questions? Like, well, I'm a little person. Like, do you have any questions for, because they won't ask me. And I'm like, obviously, if you want me to work, like, obviously something's going to have to, like, ask, like, just ask those questions. Just ask.
I
More
love
often than not, I won't need anything, but it just kind of like clears the air and makes it know, like, I'm okay if you have questions. Like, there's no reason to dance around it. If it's a question for you, like, someone better answer than the person you're confused about.
it. And I think you just like radiate confidence and it makes me so happy
Yeah.
talking with you. You're just like, hey, like this is how I am, this is who I am, and I love it. And you're so successful and you're doing so much. So is there like anything? So obviously your blog, I'm always looking up, is that correct?
Yes.
How is that like number one, you are so skilled at writing, it's ridiculous. So you should write a book if you haven't. Side,
Okay. My mom and my brother are gonna laugh at me because they proofread everything, so they're gonna laugh at that.
well, good. Mom and Dad, like she's talented. You got a talented one. Um, so are you gonna do anything with that blog? Is it gonna become something? Or just
I'm
like
hoping to. I'm trying again. Like I when I started it, it was more focused on fashion. The pandemic kind of changed everything, so I'm hoping to use it really. Right now, I'm just using it as my platform to kind of just like raise issues and ask questions. Like I started a new series called Girl Talk, where I talk with other little people about whether like industries they're in and kind of addressing it. I want to make it something bigger. I don't know yet, and I'm trying to be more active with it, like promoting it on my social media. So first, I just like posted my stories and nowhere else, but like really try to make it part of, I guess, my brand, and hope that like it starts a conversation either with hopefully with a fashion company one day and just kind of see where it could go. I'm still kind of feel like I'm been doing it for a little over a year. So like trying to like figure out where it could take me.
oh, that's brilliant. I know it's gonna take you somewhere just because like you just radiate like confidence in your story and you're like this. I don't know. You need to be on Project Runway. So Project Runway, get your act together.
Listen, I like will tag them and stuff. I'm like, you need to have a little people challenge because I think that will be like a huge step forward for the fashion industry for Shirley Project Runway because it's been around so long and has really launched careers. If they have challenged their designers to design for something for little people, like game changing. Absolutely, because then there really is no excuse if they can do it under those, under the Project Runway conditions. There's no excuses anymore. So. Carly Kloss, if you're listening.
Shout out Carly Kloss.
Carly Kloss and Christian Siriano, if you were listening to this.
I love it. Yeah, they need to Carly Kloss. Someone, if you know Carly Kloss and you're listening, you know what to do.
Yes.
But so definitely that. I would love to see you like come out with an amazing clothing line because I know you could. And I think it'd be incredible.
I would want, that's like a dream.
Well, never ever give up on dreams. I'm a big believer in speaking it. So one more question for you. And I think one. What makes you feel the most beautiful and confident?
That might be the hardest question you asked. What makes me feel the most beautiful and I don't know. That really, I think, is the hardest question you've asked.
You're like, it's too impossible. You're gonna later and know it.
I think it's like, I'm gonna text you as soon as this is like I had a better answer for it. I think it's just kind of, for me, it's like just being proud, like kind of like being proud of like when I look in the mirror and it's like, this is me, this is who I am today. Let's see how I can make, just be the best version of that. I try to, I've been through a lot of like mental, like struggling with body image and like just kind of realizing, okay, you've struggled so far to get through this day. How can, let's do it, like just like be proud of that, like regardless of how I'm feeling. It's like you may like reminding myself that you're here, you can do something with yourself, with your life, with, and hopefully affects other people. So I think like just reminding myself of that. And I try to just always look on the, my blog is called Always Looking Up for a reason. For yes, I am always looking up, but it is literally, but it is also to just be like, there's always a good in every situation, and any situation you find yourself in. I truly believe that there always is a little bit of good. You just have, pun not intended there, but like just just always like find that one positive and really grab onto it and don't let it go. So I think that's kind of like how I try to stay beautiful and confident. I think that answers your question. I hope so.
It did. It was better than I could have imagined for your answer. And I think that was brilliant.
Be bold, be you, be blatantly honest.